Today on CCM Chats, we're in Guilford to speak with Human Resources Director Mitch Goldblatt. How do you use CCM's many resources?
No, CCM has a lot of resources for us to utilize, especially the salary survey. From an HR standpoint, we're constantly trying to figure out where we are in relation to other communities, whether we are compensating our employees fairly and in the same vein as other communities. So we look at that all the time. We participate in filling out the survey because the data is only as good as those who put in the data, and we use that quite a bit. We also will take a look at the grants that come through from the state so we can budget ourselves properly and make sure that we are on line with what's coming from the state of Connecticut in terms of making sure that we've allocated funds appropriately during the year.
Great. Can you describe the CCM Labor Relations Data Service to someone that might not understand the intricacies?
Okay. Well, the data service, for the most part, provides us with a monthly newsletter that gives us a tremendous amount of information that will help us determine what the going rates are for increases in employee salaries, both in terms of what's negotiated as well as what goes through arbitration, which can be different. We use it every time we go into negotiations with any of the labor unions. We're looking at a collective bargaining agreement. We will take a look at what the going rates are across the state, what the trends are in terms of what the increases will be for labor. Whether it's a 2% or 2.5% or in between makes a big difference in how you budget and how you're able to negotiate, and especially when the union will come up with what they feel is an appropriate increase in their salary. We'll have the data that'll say, listen, you may be looking for X, but the reality is that here's what's going on in the state of Connecticut. Here's what's really being settled in the state of Connecticut in terms of negotiated settlements and what's happening when you go to arbitration and what's coming out of those. And it gives us a much stronger viewpoint in going into negotiations, and also gives us empirical data that helps us with these negotiations, whether it's in front of the other side or in front of an arbitrator or even a labor attorney.
Well, that's great. And it sounds like the fact that it's current information is useful, as well as the fact that it's a wealth of information that is
absolutely
updated regularly, so it's
the information is updated monthly. And once again, it's based on the data that comes in, and since CCM represents the vast majority, with the exception of only a couple towns and cities in the state of Connecticut, they are able to get data that no other organization is able to get.
Very relevant to what you need.
Absolutely, because we were looking at what's happening in terms of not just the data that I explained with the increases, but also the data reporter also gives us the information what's happened in any kind of arbitration decisions. So we as HR people can see what the major issues were before an arbitrator, how the arbitrator ruled, who the arbitrator was, and whether we're on the right path as to whether, if we were to go to arbitration, how might we fare? And the best way to look at that is this historical data, which is very current because it's coming quite regularly, in fact monthly, from the data service of CCM.
You would recommend this to other municipal officials?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very happy to see that CCM has included this into their overall programming and their fee structure. At one time it was a separate fee.
And now it's included as part of membership.
It's included as part of membership, which makes it that much more accessible to every community that's a CCM member. And it should be used by even boards of selectmen, boards of aldermen, whenever they're looking at the data they need to see whether we're paying the whatever individual, whether there's a town engineer or the first selectman, or what's the going rate, what are we looking at? And then also going to negotiations, what is the trend? What is the percentage increase that is relevant right now today when going into negotiations across the state? Not just what's happening in our town, but looking outside what's happening across the state of Connecticut.
Well, thank you for speaking with us today.
You're very welcome, Matt. Thank you.